right. Still there? Rich?
I am.
Excellent. Looks like we have good levels again. And the
Levels.
Yep, it's all seems to be working as it should, and we are recording. And let's try this one more time.
Okay.
Rich is.
Are you recording now?
Oh, of course.
Okay, good.
I'm always.
You're gonna. Good. I don't want you to miss this gold.
Yes, this is what I always do. I always have this beginning stuff before we start.
No, I love it. When are you gonna press the music? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Skimmate Podcast with Rich and Terrence. Today, we will be talking about COVID, unrest in America, and reef tanks. You can't have one without the other two. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're back after a long time, and we're kind of thrilled to be doing this again.
Oh, man. You know it, man. It's been a long, long time.
It's been, I think our last episode was in April.
Oh, my gosh. No, we recorded it since then, didn't we? Please tell me we have. We haven't.
I have it right here. Episode 12 was 416.
No wonder people hate us for not recording enough. I mean, people are like, record. You guys need another one.
Yeah, and then all kinds of crazy-ass shit happened.
Yes. So there are some reasons why we haven't done them. Small little reasons. But yeah, but I mean, COVID definitely interrupted us quite a bit because we have to do this all remote. And then shortly after our last one, maybe not shortly, but after the last one, we had the social unrest issues in the country that
and you and I have had very different reactions to that. You were like, let's do a podcast because it helps me not think of it. And I was like, it feels unconscionable to me to think about anything else right now. So
completely different ways of thinking about it. And I was also thinking about the audience too. I mean, I was thinking about what it would be like to have an hour where you could listen to stuff that you really enjoyed listening to, because I think the people that listen to our podcast enjoy us and enjoy fish and aquariums and all of that, and could tune out the rest of the world for an hour, because I mean, I thought people really could use that. But this is what this show's about, is differing opinions. So
and also I agree with you, but it was like right in the first 4 days we were scheduled to record. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to, that's not going to work for me. And then it went on for another week and a half. And then we tried to record, and there were some family illnesses that we had to deal with, and other things that got into our way. And
it seemed like every time we would set a date, it was something would pop up, some issue of some nature. But we're doing it now. Well, let's try to get into a better rhythm again. And when do you think
our sponsors are pissed?
Oh yeah, I mean
I keep getting calls from
all the way down the
sponsors.
all the way down the list, man. Every single one of them, no doubt. It's too much.
I think we probably do another one in 2 weeks. I think we'll
in
be
2
able
weeks.
To do
Okay.
It.
When are we going to be able to do them together?
Have a few guests that were. Say that again.
When are we going to be able to have them together?
When are we going to be able to have them together? The next 2 weeks will be very telling on that.
Because
that's the kind of thing I've been saying about COVID since the beginning. And every 2 weeks, something stupid happens, and we can't get back together again. I think we're lined up for a world of shit, and I don't think we're going to be getting together in person anytime soon. I'd love to be wrong on that. Don't think I am.
Even if we sit far across the room from each other and throw things at each other?
Now, we could do it outside if we wanted to get together in the backyard.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah, we can do it on my deck.
Right.
I just like that, face-to-face Rich and Terrence kind of thing. So
I understand. We need 2 different tables, so we're a little far apart.
We could do it.
Outside, I'll be okay with that.
I got long enough cables.
We can do it here, too.
Yep, but it's your turn.
Yeah, we to come out to you?
Yeah, I haven't forgotten.
Yeah, we just have to do it in the day.
Yeah, or you'll fall asleep.
No, or it's going to be dark and it'll be stupid to be outside.
That's true. But I would find a way to make it work. I'd find a way to light it. I'd find a way to do whatever, Rich. So don't worry. No excuses.
You got a bunch of extra lights laying around?
Oh, yeah.
We could bring back. I got metal halides under the house.
I've got plenty of lights. I can figure it out. No excuses.
You can call Ike at his company and get some strip lights.
Yep, absolutely. man.
Egozotic. That's what they're called.
So anyway, I think we can get back into the rhythm of some recordings and try to keep our audience together. We've built a little audience that we have, and let's try to keep it. Right?
Yeah, we'd like to do it. And again, we'd like to do this. There was just other things happening.
That's the way it is. That's the way it is. It's why I don't like promising, stuff either, because then you feel even worse. And, it's like, oh yeah, this is going to be a weekly thing or a, bi-monthly thing or whatever it is. And I think that's part of the demise of these kinds of endeavors, because the demands, right, that people place even on themselves are too great, and then they feel bad, and then they're like, yeah, I just can't do it at all. And I'd rather have it be infrequent, and unpredictable than, not at all. So.
Yeah, and you and I talked about that when we started. We said it's got to be easy, because we're doing it for free, and it's got to be fun because we're doing it for free.
Right.
So it's got to be both of those things.
Right.
And I totally love doing it. But if Nuri would come through with that big huge sponsorship.
Yeah, well, let's have him on the show.
We're compelled to do it.
Let's have him on the show.
Oh, great. I love that our list of guests is huge, and we've had no guests yet. But I'm writing down Yuri.
Yeah, let's have him on the show. I mean, he can talk about food
Nuri.
or protein or I don't know what, but food, nutrition, fish.
He's also just really fun to talk to.
Okay, well, good. We'll definitely have him on the program. All right. So what's going on in your tank,
If the listeners
Rich?
have any ideas for guests, they should let us know, and we'll consider them.
Absolutely.
So what's been going on with your tank? That's kind of the first thing we usually talk about is our tanks.
You
What's
want me to
going
go
on with
first?
yours?
I want me to go first? Okay. So
That's why I asked the question.
Yes. So last weekend I did my my monthly water change that happens every 3 months, which generally means I fill the thing up with water, and it takes about 4 or 5 hours for that or whatever it is. Dump my 10 scoops of salt in and let it go with the wave pump for a couple hours, and people would think I have it automated, but I don't. It's just all gravity fed, easy to do,
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the things that's interesting. I took the container out to clean it for the first time ever, and let me tell you, salt, the synthetic salts. I don't know what is in those things, but it's disgusting. The stuff
that brown stuff
it just leaves behind. Yeah.
Yeah, vitamins probably.
I don't know.
Really.
Do you have any theories on, is it worse when you don't care like I don't and just dump a bunch of salt in and mix it all at once? Does it precipitate out? What do you think?
I don't think it makes a difference.
No?
I don't think it makes a difference. No, I mean, as long as you're not picking up the container and pouring the very last dregs out,
Right.
Who cares? It's inert. It's just sitting there.
I don't know.
That's my thought.
The first salts I used, and hey, we'll probably even talk about this a little bit later on. The little bit of this topic was the ATM hot salt. Okay, they're branded salt, and it was an anhydrous salt.
I'm shaking. Oh my god.
And so
why did you? Oh, I'll let you finish your story.
Yeah, so it's an anhydrous salt, right? So it's one of those that gets hot, but it dissolved really cleanly, and I mean, clearly it's not Wade and Brett, mixing up salt in Las Vegas. It's somebody else's salt they stuck their name on, but it was great salt. It was clean, and it was one of the best ones I think I've had. And then I won a pallet of Fritz salt. And started
pissing everyone in the world off.
Yes, and so I was using the Fritz salt, and that seems to have a lot more stuff left behind. I don't know if it's good or bad. I'm not placing judgment, but I definitely had to clean it out.
Your tank looks like crap, so I'm sure what's ever being left behind is really ruining everything.
It's vital. It's absolutely vital.
Yeah.
I often wonder when
I get it.
When people use those salts where the stuff is left behind, and I think to myself, would you have rather had that crap in your tank?
We don't really know. It depends what it is.
Yeah. So anyway,
I don't care.
I did that, and not that it's related to the water change, because I am kind of I'm not one of these people who goes through all kinds of machinations to get the right temperature and to get the perfect salinity and the perfect everything when I do the water change, because it's usually like this last time I did 200-gallon water changes. My tank's 100 gallons, and the next day I do another one, and that's pretty much it. But shortly after doing the water changes, my torch coral was unhappy, and it's losing heads about 1 or 2 a day in the tank.
It's that precipitate.
Yeah, no.
It's that precipitate. How is it losing heads? Are there polyps? Are they coming off the skeleton?
Yeah, they're coming off the skeleton. The skeleton's still white, on there, and they just like sloughing off kind of thing. They're not like turning to like jelly and then leaving. They're just leaving.
You find the whole thing without a skeleton, the whole polyp without a skeleton.
I haven't seen the polyp yet. I mean, I just see the white part left over, and a couple of them still have a couple of like pieces of the polyp or something in the middle, and then they're just gone. And it's been slowly progressing. But what's interesting is there's 2 torch colonies right next to each other that are from the same colony, but they had broken off and they ended up being separate, and they've stayed separate, of course. The one doesn't have any on it yet that are coming off, and the other one is the one that's progressing. And even though it's close to the other one, it hasn't affected it yet. So I don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I went through that a year or 2 ago where I was just losing polyps off of all kinds of LPS corals. The white skeleton. I would find pieces of intact polyp in the tank, and it was a friggin' nightmare. And I threw the kitchen sink at it. Still have no idea what it is. So, it could be anything from not liking whatever you did with the water this particular time to some kind of pathogen. It's just kind of impossible to tell. I mean, even when I was looking at stuff under a scope, I finally saw that it was, something bad was going on. But whether that was the cause or that was opportunistic is, that's a difficult thing.
I mean, there was like some little critters in there eating stuff or whatever.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. But I've got no way to know if they were there.
They were the cause, or they were just after the fact cleaning up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel very fortunate, though. In the tank overall, I feel super fortunate. It's been doing really good. I've been super lazy. I absolutely need to do some tidying up in the tank in terms of down in the sand bed, which I never touch. And we'll probably talk a little bit about that when we talk about stability and whatnot, because I got some thoughts on that a little bit later. But yeah, everything's been going really, really well. So I can't, knock on wood, I can't complain too much about, if I have even one of my nicest LPS completely die off. Sad as that sounds. But the corals are just so overgrown in here right now. And the lazy part, of me right now that makes me feel bad is not like, okay, there's hair algae I need to pull out. No, that's not happening. It's not, some of the other things that you're supposed to do in your tank. It's my corals need to be trimmed. It is starting to look like my hair right now. I mean, just out of control. And out of the water.
Such a terrible problem to have.
Yeah, I know. That is the woe is Terrence. He's got corals that are growing out of the water and all over the place, and the poor guy can't, to have time to cut them off and make $5,000 in frags. I mean, or something like that, And that's really what it comes down to. I just haven't made the time, because there's some nice corals in here that I have. They're just massive, and then they die off on the bottom, or other corals below them can't grow, and it does become somewhat of a problem in that regard. But I guess things could be worse.
A healthy reef is a dynamic, growing, and dying environment.
Yeah,
I think people tend to forget that one of the functions of coral is to grow quickly and then die as it raises everything up. So that's just an interesting thing. We were going to talk about, we actually had a specific COVID and unrest thing to talk about.
We did? Okay.
Which was remote talks.
Oh, okay.
I know you did one recently, and I've done a couple.
Oh,
of them.
yes, I did.
How I've enjoyed them actually greatly. How was your experience?
Well, the one recently that I did, it was. In all honesty, it was okay. It needed a moderator, to be honest. It was, it was, hey, come on, and people ask you questions. I'll throw them on the screen, and in between asking questions, you can just spin plates. And that is, it's people like you or I, and I'll brag on you more than I'll brag on myself. We know how to do that, but that could be a disaster for some people, where you don't they don't have anything to do unless they take a question, right? And if they
it's just dead air.
Yeah, it's dead air. And if they don't run it out like the question and really get into the question, they could just answer it quickly. There'd be a lot of dead air, And if your audience is not super huge, the time between questions, and so I like the idea of the remote thing. I like the idea of live streams and whatnot. And the latest thing I'm doing for Neptune is doing Q&As, or trying to do live Q&As through the Facebook groups feature, which is pretty cool because everybody that's in our Facebook group can pop in and ask me questions, and I'm going to try to do it on a more scheduled basis, so people can come in and just say hi and say, hey, what about this, and just get it straight from me instead of having to post back and forth on forums like crazy. But I don't know. What's your thoughts on all the remote stuff?
I kind of love them. I kind of love not having to go away, because it's like if I'm going to fly, I'd rather spend a couple days, but I often don't have the time to spend a couple days. So it's like I'm just flying to do the gig and then I'm coming home, which is fine. I don't mind that either. But boy, being able to just, put on a shirt and come sit down.
Yeah, I think that's the positive side of it. But you're not, I think, touching on how you really get to interact with people outside of the 50 minutes or whatever that you give a talk or take a question and answer session. All of those little moments, when you go out, I'm sure you have a dinner sometimes and you meet with 10 or 12 different people and talk reef and find out about what it's like to be in Dubuque, Iowa or something. I don't know where that's even a place, but
at the same time, I mean, there are obviously different experiences,
right?
But to the point you were just making, I think talking to the people that stay in the chat longer gives me the same kind of feeling. Now, obviously, it's not the same as hanging out or going to someone's house or looking at their tutorials or whatever, but it's a carbon neutral-ish, easy kind of way to have these discussions, and it depends on what you're doing. So I've done a couple full talks over it,
right?
And that's pretty interesting. And then I've done a couple tours. Because I got a lab in the tank and the crawl space. I throw the phone on a gimbal and walk around with it and show this is what this is and this is what that is. And if people have questions, they can interrupt or they can wait till it's over, and then I can go back and point to something else. I always try to have a specific thing I'm talking about, so if there's no questions coming in, I can get back to that. But I thought they were really fun, but they're a different thing. So I did one for Arizona, and it was there was 15 people on, but it was as opposed to when you sometimes go and there's hundreds of people, but it was really an engaged group, and I very much enjoyed it. So it's just and I think that's another tool clubs have.
I agree.
And the more tools, the easier.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's an evolution too in people's comfortability with it and understanding of it and understanding of how to do these things, and the people in the clubs, being able to understand the tech and to make it happen. And the more and more that happens, the more of these things will come about. And I think that the groups thing in Facebook for clubs and whatnot, I think is really something that should be used more. I think it's a really neat thing. I think this whole idea of the Zoom meeting and Facebook, these Facebook groups or what have you, definitely a cool way to approach engagement.
Yeah, super easy.
Yeah.
Now, so that's that.
Cool.
Okay, so what's next? What's going on in my reefing world?
Yes.
There's a bunch of things that happened in the last couple of weeks. The number one is I got a 3D printer, which I think is awesome. And I know you and I talked about it when I was thinking about it. This thing's been pretty rock solid, pretty straightforward.
Good.
And my learning curve on it's been pretty good. I'm pretty happy with what do I have? I have stuff laying around. Here is my my oscillation overthruster.
I have no idea what that is. I saw it on Facebook. I have no idea.
It's something from a Buckaroo Banzai movie.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, you don't have to. It's the right people know. And one of the reasons I got
is it like
that
Caddyshack?
Because
I like Caddyshack. So
it's exactly like Caddyshack.
Okay, good.
Except yeah. Anyway, except less boobs than Caddyshack.
There's no boobs in Caddyshack. You obviously never seen.
There are so boobs in Caddyshack. What's her name? The girl from Tron. Her boobs are in Caddyshack. Just before Ty sprays oil everywhere, we see her boobs.
Oh, okay.
And in the pool.
The pool scene. Yes, that's true.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Anyway, ask me anything else about that movie. I don't know. Apparently, I like boobs. So there's a bunch of stuff I want to print for the tank for, coral. I want to customize some frag racks. I want to do some stands to get things out of boundary layers. But I haven't started printing that stuff because that filament that doesn't degrade in water is a little bit harder to work with. So I haven't gotten there yet. But behind me there, you can see I've got all that T-slot aluminum. And it turns out, boy, oh boy, there's all kinds of little knickknacks. Where did I put it here? For T-slot, that.
Remember, this is a podcast, so you got to describe it a little bit because not everybody's going to see the video.
I'm just showing you a hook.
So the aluminum's 80-20 type stuff, right? So it's the 80-20 T-bar kind of stuff. Mm-hmm.
It's 40 by 40. I don't know what 80-20 means. It's
okay.
It's 40 by 40 T-slot aluminum. And so for this cable holder, it prints with a little slit in kind of a ring, and it's elastic. It bounces back out. So
what kind of material is it that you're using, that you're printing with?
This is PLA.
The PLA stuff, right? That's the stuff that you can't use in the water, right?
Right. And the T-slot goes in, and here's a hook. And so, Ben Johnson's losing his mind because I'm organizing all my cables. And I printed some big ones, and I'm under the house organizing the cables down there as well, moving all the Apex components around. So that's been kind of fun.
Earth will shift off its axis if the underhouse lab actually has some organization down there.
Yeah, no, it's kind of happening. It's kind of great. And it's kind of nice when you've planned something for 5 years and you actually start doing it, because you spend a lot less time sitting around going, what is my basic thought? And you start going, oh, I got to move that to there and that to there. Like, I'm probably going to end up moving all of the dosers to another spot, but that's all fine. That'll be good stuff. And I can do it in chunks, and it feels pretty good. Now, I'm not making it kind of crazy beautiful because I don't care that much because it's under the house. But having it less of a mess is kind of nice. And I'm doing it here, and I'm doing it behind the tank. So that's very cool. The other thing I was going to talk about, have we talked about these baby corals?
Hey, hang on a second before you get to baby corals. So as far as your gear, didn't I also see that the famed DJ switch panel things that you talk about in every talk you ever give finally gave out?
Yeah, I don't think I've talked about those for a while.
I don't know, man. I think it's on every single one of your Rich's lazy mother. No,
they're great. They still are pretty great. If you're not running a controller or something, it makes complete sense to run things to a DJ panel where you have a bank of switches rather than a strip plug, and then you don't have to unplug anything.
But they finally went out, you said, right?
Well, the ones under the house are gone.
Yeah,
I tossed them because they died. They literally, I was like, why aren't the pumps working? And I had to spend 15 minutes tracking down where the problem was. And it was like, oh, this power strip is dead. Okay, that's good. I can fix that because I still have 4 of them, but I didn't put one back in. I have 2 brand new ones or 4 brand new ones. So yeah, those are going, but I still use those, behind the tank. They're great. They allow me to turn off and on the closed loop and the main return, and a couple other knick-knacky things.
Okay.
One day those will probably
go baby corals. You were starting to talk about baby corals.
If we were in April...
You were just starting to get that thing all set up, and had just finished setting it up in April after Ben came over and got all your stuff together for you, right?
No, that was in February, but that's all right. I was talking about the spawn. I'm trying to remember if we talked about having baby corals at the house.
No.
So... We went in February. of this year, we also went in February of last year and collected parent colonies, right? To spawn at the Albright Lab at the Academy of Sciences.
Correct.
And so this year, the spawn was going to happen in April. And because we had collected corals just before COVID shut down, right? But we couldn't get into the Academy in any kind of meaningful way to do any kind of work there. But what we were able to do is Rebecca Albright, it's her lab, she was able to go in. And what we ended up doing, because we couldn't be on site to monitor for the spawning, because we have a window of when we think the corals are going to go off. So one of the techs at the Academy set up a camera that would see an infrared, and we could turn on our red lights really low, like at 5% or something.
Okay.
And because of the infrared of the camera, it was really bright, and we could monitor for spawning. So we could sit there and we couldn't see if the corals were setting, but we could see when they started to go.
Okay.
So that was pretty cool. And we did that for a while.
So as soon as they started to go, somebody's watching that camera the whole time, and then somebody runs down there.
No, it was up publicly for people to watch if they wanted to tune in for the time when we expected the spawning, and Rebecca and I at least would be watching and taking 15-minute shifts.
Ah, okay.
What happened? We ended up in April having a dribble spawn one day, and then she said, "Screw it, I'm going in," and so she was there monitoring for the rest of it. Where only a few.
Rich is like, you're only at I don't know, 3.5 centimeters dilation. They're not ready yet.
You've only put out one part of the baby, so we're going to wait a little longer. So Rebecca went in, and so instead of doing all the work, we had a lot of experiments lined up. We had my thesis lined up. We were going to do all kinds of stuff. But none of that was going to happen because we couldn't go in there to do the work. But she could go in to collect the gametes. So we ended up leaving half of the fertilized embryos at the Academy, and half of them came here to the home lab. And so now I've been on baby coral duty, which is, of course, incredibly fun and incredibly annoying at the same time. And so the lab got a workout before it was even ready. So I had to shift things around and set things up to be able to do it. And it was actually pretty cool. I learned a bunch of stuff that I wouldn't have learned because it was under my 24-hour care in my house. So I could check it anytime and notice things that I didn't notice. I ended up, we often use like Artemia or brine shrimp cones to keep the larvae moving around. Instead, I put the larvae in buckets that had floats on them with mesh windows that the larvae couldn't get through, and then ended up setting the wave-making pumps to make a nice choppy wave. And not choppy, but a nice, boom, 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 up and down. It wasn't choppy. It was a nice smooth up and down wave. Yeah,
an oscillation. Yeah,
and that kept the embryonic corals nicely separated. It was really pretty great. So there are a few things like that I learned that I wouldn't have learned had they not been here. Then in May, we got a second round of spawning. We had the spawn, and then May happens and we get more freaking corals spawning. But the cool thing about the May spawn was that the parent colonies from the year before spawned as well with the new colonies.
Oh, wow.
So
you actually, it wasn't just that they were gravid colonies that you brought from the ocean. They actually got, I don't know, regravid. I don't know.
Yeah, metagenesis occurs.
Okay, there we go.
It takes about 8 months, and that's a big part of the keeping everything in the dark and all the lunar and solar cycles is developing that. But they went.
That's a pure sign of success there, right? I mean, that's like the real success.
We did the thing. Finally, after 3 years,
it's like getting the pandas to get it on, right? It's like not getting. It's like the difference between grabbing a pregnant panda in the wild, okay, or getting them to get it on in the in the zoo.
Yes, exactly.
For the lay people like me.
Yeah, you like to lay with pandas. So we're thrilled about that because we really wanted to do that, and
very cool.
And it happened. And the very exciting thing is the 2020 corals and the 2019 corals spawned at the same time. It was just beautiful. So I ended up with a second round of corals, baby corals.
So then then you get them, they mix together, right? Fertilizes, and then they settle, and then they get on these frag plugs, and then And then quickly, you basically have to clean those frag plugs, right? It's like urchin duty normally, but then if you don't have enough urchins, you have to do it.
It sucks. It's and they're baby corals, so they all die all the time anyway, right?
Right.
And, this was what a bunch of the research is going to be about, how to make them not die as much.
Right. So you have to be a coral wet nurse, is what you're telling me.
Exactly, and it never ends. I mean, in coralline algae will cover them in the course of 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, that stuff is evil.
And then there were sea spiders at the academy, and now I've got sea spiders
Really?
here. And
Really?
that.
Sea spiders. The coolest things. If only you didn't care about your corals.
Right. And there's like 1,500 species. So it's like, is this a bad species? The good species? Is it just overrun and being annoying? Or are they actually feeding? And I can't tell.
For those in our audience who haven't seen these, go Google these up, because, if you think you're creeped out by your average house spider, these things are like what your dreams think spiders are.
I've got a great video of one moving around in a drop of water that I'll link. We'll link in this.
It's
in the
crazy how creepy these things are.
I think I've seen them on top of baby corals. I think I've not seen them on top of baby corals. I waited as long as I felt, and then I dipped everything, but of course didn't get them all because I don't want to be aggressive on the dips.
Right.
And even the other day, a couple days ago, I went through and started removing frag plugs that didn't have any babies on them, because you lose. It just happens.
Right.
And so, and at first you're like, I want to put everything in here and give it all a chance. And then when you start, when you're using a tiny dental tool to scrape coralline algae around from the edge of a smaller than a millimeter coral, you want fewer things to do.
Right. Right. You're like, you can die. You can die, and you can die. I don't have to clean you tomorrow.
Yeah. You're going to die. You're gone. And I found some more sea spiders, but whatever. There's a bunch that seem to be doing really well. So that's really exciting. And that opened up some new ideas for next season spawn that Rebecca and I have already been talking about, and we're pretty excited about.
Cool.
We're very excited to do that work. So that was very cool. And I'm trying to get corals from Tonga to spawn in here, but that might mean I have to deal with importers directly with the people who clear my shipments and things like that. And I'm trying to avoid that because that's just kind of a nightmare. The thing that's got not spawn was I had a pump go out the other day.
Okay.
I was sitting. Actually, I think it was during the messenger thing with you guys.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That I went into I wanted to see what it was like, and it was a nice conversation. It was like hanging out with your friends. It was great. But then I noticed some of my lock line chuttering, and went, "That's bad."
It was doing what?
And
chuttering.
Chuttering when it's when a pipe moves a little bit.
Is that chattering or chuttering?
Chuttering.
I never even heard that word. I'm gonna have to look up that word. Okay.
Yeah, tell me if I made it up.
Okay.
60% chance I'm
So
right.
it was moving around, and you're like, it shouldn't do that.
Moving around. It shouldn't do that. What the hell is that? I know that the flow sensor on that one hasn't been reading. So, maybe something's going on. And that's the pump that is the furthest underneath the house in the crawl space. Right?
Of course.
So that's the one I've got to really get to.
Right.
And then I got to take the FFM module off and, all that kind of stuff. And it became very clear very quickly that the pump was dying, that it was actually, that's what was chuttering, was that the pump would come on and come off and not come on all the way. And then it stopped working. I really couldn't even get it to spin. So did I panic, Terrence?
Of course not. You have a backup.
No. Exactly. I have a backup. And I think this is my last backup, which is interesting because now I've got to decide, do I get another one?
Yeah, I know. That's always it, right? It's like
actually, I've got one more backup, one more in box, but it's like it's been 5 years since I used these pumps, since I got them. Is it time to start thinking about the new thing? Is there a better
and just
pump?
and basically just replace them both and use that other one for whatever, right?
And then, yeah. So, actually, no, I do have two backups. I do have two. I still have two extras, so I probably won't change anything. So that was an exciting time because it was just a pain in the ass to crawl around under there and deal with the dirt and have to, deal with it and also be scared what's wrong. Am I going to be able to get this back up and running?
I'd be more scared what's in the corner of your crawl space than I would anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know what it's like under mine too.
Controller company people I have under there. So that was pretty cool. The flow meter didn't spin up again, so I'm gonna have to get myself together.
It probably
I cleaned
has like some sort of snail or something in it, maybe. Or
I cleaned it.
Oh, really?
I acided it. I sprayed it out. I got it moving. I thought all was good, and it's apparently not. So I'm gonna have to one day. I'll have to do it again and let you know about it.
Okay.
The other one's working flawlessly. I don't know what's wrong with this one.
Okay.
But I'll take a look. I do like having the flow meter. I do like being able to see that things are going.
They are handy.
And watching when it drops. And so when I turned off all the pumps because I wanted to figure out which pump was having the problem. I didn't know if it was the return. And when I did that, something came loose in the return, and it was clearly pumping more water. And I could tell because I was seeing the bottom of my center brace, get touched by the water.
Right.
And I thought, oh my God, are my overflows clogged or is it something else? And I was able to look at the graph and go, oh no, it's pumping more water now. So that's clearly what it is. That was pretty cool. So,
cool.
What's the upshot of that? Boy, having backups
yeah.
really, really good for your peace of mind.
On those key items for sure, no doubt, 100%.
Yeah, it was like, oh, got it. So
let's skip ahead to
that
questions.
That was my exciting day. Okay, go for it.
So we've got Flatland Reefer here. Says, enjoy the podcast. Thank you very much. I'd like to hear about your experience with sun corals in your tank, Rich. Looks like you have several in your SPS dominant tank, and they really make things pop. How much special care do you give the NPS, and do they take a lot of extra effort to keep alive?
Yeah, so my tank's kind of 3 tanks in one, I think of it. The upper part of the tank is SPS, the lower part of the tank is NPS, and then the way the rockworks is made for caves is for the fish. And I enjoy that. So what are the keys to what I'm doing with the LPS or the NPS corals? A lot of different kinds of sun corals and dendros and some other stuff as well. The most important thing is flow. Flow. More important than water, flow. And where they seem to do really well is where there is pretty much constant flow. It's where I have them mostly where the return hits, and the return is doing 24/7 in that direction. And when the other pumps come on, it doesn't really stop that current from occurring. And they really, really like it.
Why do you think that is from a physiological perspective? Is it food, do you think?
The flow?
Yeah.
Why the flow is important?
Why is it
the flow? Yeah, because it's
counterintuitive for what is a soft coral, right? I mean, by soft is things that move in the current, right? That we see, you generally don't like them to be hit with a lot of flow because it's bad for pulling their tissue off and everything. I get that the sun corals are different, but it does seem counterintuitive that way, right? Because of all the other corals that are kind of like that morphology, we don't hit them with a lot of flow. So why do they like it? Do you think, or do you know?
Because they're more active hunters. They're more like anemones with a skeleton than they are like frog spawn.
So it's so they can get more food, basically, is what it is.
When you hit it, well, and also, the flow does a lot of stuff for coral biology, for respiration, and the flow does trigger them to open. That's one of the things that they go, I should open now. So yeah, it's all of that. And when you hit like a Euphilia with food, you kind of hope some of it goes in, right? When you hit a sun coral, it's like snap, it grabs it and pulls it in. So yeah, and then flow, and then food. I feed a crap ton of food. I should do weights on the foods one day so I can actually give a number to people.
It's nuts.
But you've seen it. It's a lot of food.
I've seen them feed.
And I want them to eat.
I think that's really the real big thing on those, and Joe and his big aquarium out there in Long Island and everything, you see how the food goes in. And when the food goes in, that much food, they're going to get it, right? And, if you feed like you're just feeding your fish or whatever, and you feed meaty foods too. You feed massive amounts of meaty foods, not just, powdered, coral food.
No, I do in the auto feeder, the drip feeder I made, I do powdered foods and I do Calanus, PE Calanus, because those things tend to get everything to open a lot.
Yeah, Calanus are great.
And it's good for the smaller polyped corals that also have mouths and need to eat. And then, these corals, I have a lot of them, and they have big mouths, and they eat a lot. So feeding them a lot is good, and there's a lot of fish in there too. I did check my phosphates and my nitrates recently, and the nitrates were 50 still. Ooh. Those have held pretty stable. And the phosphate was down to like 0.17, 0.18, and is now back up to 0.9.
Wow.
But I think that's because of how I've been feeding the baby corals, because the baby corals need to eat a crap ton as well.
Okay. All right.
And that's harder. But everything's fine, so I don't care about those numbers.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I keep it: flow and food. And I think people forget both of those things all the time. You know,
Absolutely.
When you go to a dive site that has got nothing, and you dive a dive site that's got nothing to do with the flow, with what the flow is like on that site, because when the flow is ripping, you don't go to that dive site, and the flow gets ripping.
Right.
I promise you, the flow gets ripping. And then food, things just gotta eat. I think I think with these baby corals, I've underestimated the amount of food. One of the things I want to do is not put them in a big tank. I want to keep them in a tiny tank, so I can really pound them with food for the first 4 or 5 months.
Well, is it really how much they eat, or that you need to have a lot so they have an opportunity to eat?
It's both.
Okay.
It's both, and you can hit it. You can hit it different ways. So you can put a lot of food in over time, so it's there all the time.
Right.
Or you can flood feed, so they can get it for a certain amount of time. I think they need a drip feed all the time, and then they need periods of flood.
Interesting.
I think that's what I'm going to do with them next time, because I just want them to eat as much as they possibly can.
I remember when I was in down in Cabo. Right, I remember seeing
Cabo San Lucas.
Yes, I remember diving down there, and also snorkeling on the other side, a little bit of the Cape, and just the fields of those corals, just those massive amounts of those sun corals or whatever, dendrils or whatever. I don't even know which ones they were, but just walls and walls and walls and walls of them, just crazy amounts. And I was like, wow, this is so cool.
I'm pretty sure they're all invasive as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of that there in Cabo. There's a lot of fish and eels and other things that are like, what is this doing here?
Cabo's an interesting place. So the flow and food. Anything else there, Terrence?
Nope, not on that one.
Nope. Okay,
not on that one.
Next question.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. That's for Ben Johnson. Question from Brad Russell. A topic that would be helpful to me is when getting a new tank going and trying to get stability, what are the things that are really important to focus on, and what things don't deserve as much attention as you might read about on the internet? Parameters, dosing, water change schedule, things like that. What do you think, Terrence?
So I'm going to start with something that's a little bit different now than even I've been doing this in my my renaissance of keeping 2009, I guess, right? And even in that short time period, things have changed dramatically when you're starting up a new tank, to where now we're starting up what I think are these pristine environments, right? So dry rock that's coming in, and the artificial water, brand new, start out with brand new water, and then we dump a couple of bacterias in here, bottles of bacteria and whatnot. And I think that's I think that's much harder when you're doing that, from what I've seen from a lot of people, to get one of those tanks stable than it is to do it the way I was kind of taught in recent times to do it, which is start the tank up. If you're going to use new rock or newly cured rock or what have you, and you're not going to have crazy live rock in there and whatnot, if you're coming from a smaller tank to your bigger tank, take a little bit of your water and take some of your sand and take one of your rocks, and because you have all of these bacteria cultures that exist in those things that are going to kickstart the tank and allow it to perform a lot of different things that we don't even understand that are happening in the aquariums that lead to, or help lead to, that stability. And I don't think we do enough of that now, and I think that's what right away gets us kind of out of kilter. What's your thoughts on that theory?
I agree.
You agree with me? Agree. Awesome.
I agree. I know it's like the world has stopped. I don't. Yeah. there's nothing really to say. I just agree.
So
and I also think people aren't patient enough.
Well, you have to be more patient, I think, when you're doing it the way people are doing it now, because there are many of these, bacteria strains, I think, that end up getting into your tank. So it's this crazy thing we talked about before, where people have, I'm going to have a pest-free tank, and I'm going to have a this-free tank, and everything. And then what happens is, 3 months into their thing, they get a frag from somebody, and they drop it in their tank. And even if they dip it or what have you, it's got some bacterias and other things from that guy's tank on it, and it just helps your tank. It's another little inoculation that happens in your tank. And eventually you build up all of these different bacterias into your tank and make it more stable, because some of them feed certain other creatures, and just lots of stuff going on in biodiversity in your aquarium. The other thing that for stability, and not trying to plug or anything, but you need to have a way to keep all your parameters stable. And testing is great, but temperature, number one, keeping your tank, in a relatively stable temperature means that things are not adjusting to temperature as much, and they're focusing on other things. That's a real layman's way of discussing it, but I've seen it. I've seen it where tanks are fluctuating 78 to 82, because they're using a plus or minus 2 degree thermostat heater. And the comparison in those tanks and the stuff that's going positive and negative in those tanks versus somebody who's running, from 77.8 to 78.2, it's different. And so getting stable is important. And not having what I call these are mini catastrophes, right? Catastrophes where everything's gone and you end up leaving the hobby or what have you. But often the number of mini catastrophes we have pulls you out of that course to stability that you would otherwise have. And so things like monitoring help you, to not have that. And then the last thing I would say is the hands in the tank. I think hands in the tank create, unstable situations, right? Again, things are adjusting. You have an opportunity to get, nasty stuff that you have around the house in the tank, which may not kill off the whole tank, but it could just take you, there's 4 or 5 days right there. And a lot of people love to have their hands in the tank, especially newer people that just a frag falls over, a thing does this, it would look so much better if I moved that little rock another 2 inches over this way, or, that snail died and I better pick up his shell out of the sand because that looks ugly. And that's one of my biggest things is hands out of the tank. I rarely put my hands in the tank, unless I absolutely have to.
I put other things in the tank.
There it is, folks.
It took everything to not.
Minute 47. It took for the Rich Ross innuendo.
I was gonna do it blatant, but I decided to try to respect you.
Yes. Yes.
That all sounds right to me. What I tell people is that they should have an idea of how they think the tank works, and then they should do things to reinforce that, right? So I think the worst thing is when people change ideas in the middle of cycling, and all of a sudden they read about a new way, so they're going to try it that way. And for an experienced reefer, I think that can make some kind of sense. But for a new reefer, you're just taking a guess. And I think a lot of setting up a new tank is doing nothing, is letting it stabilize. You keep introducing different bacteria. We don't know which are going to be the dominant ones. So sometimes if you introduce new bacteria, that's a better or more dominant one, then your whole tank is going to shift. So, I like to set up a tank with rockwork in the shape that I like to look at. And then I do some test corals. And as we go, we start adding them and, changing what you need to change. If you want to do, what's important to focus on? It's important to focus on letting the tank get established.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely.
If you got an algae problem and there's not much in the tank, just turn your lights off for a week. Don't touch anything. I'm not a fan of filter socks anyway, especially when setting up a new tank. You want it to cycle. I remember in the 80s in the fish stores in LA when I used to work there, it was just leave it alone,
Right.
put a piece of shrimp in it and then, cover it up. I can remember telling people, just cover it up and don't look at it for a month.
Right.
Just leave it alone.
Right.
And then you can start putting stuff in it and and you'll avoid a lot of the issues.
But that's why, all these bottles of bacteria and everything people making tons of money off of it, because who doesn't want instant success? It's it is very attractive to want to dump bottles of stuff into your tank and have positive outcomes, and that's why I say just resist as much as possible. We've talked about the stuff I've done on my tank. Even just me trying to get to fluconazole was a huge jump. So,
yeah.
But
if you can't measure for it, if you can't test it, don't put it in.
Yeah, that's a really good rule of thumb. You're not always going to be able to keep that throughout your reef keeping, experience, but if you try as hard as you can to stick to that rule, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think we're answering the question, right?
Yep, I think we got it answered. I think we've got that answered.
Okay.
Let's
Great, excellent.
You want to go to our think about segment?
You've got the clock, so whatever you want to.
Yeah,
you think.
We go over 5 or 10 on this one. It's okay too. We're at 50 minutes.
Right.
So
okay, so let's do that, and we'll skip Smart Corner, and we'll do that next episode.
Okay, so
great.
We've had this on our set list for a little while, talking about influencers. It's a interesting phenomenon over the last probably 5 to 7 years. The growth of YouTube and the people who are known entities there, as well as on the home screen, the the telly, as they say, with the program that's no longer existing, right? So the tanked guys are, I guess, influencers for some people, right, Rich?
They're on the telly, the
yes.
tanked guys?
Yes.
They're on the telly in Britain?
They are now.
They
are a syndicated show, so yes. The people around the world love that particular show. But starting with the YouTubers, it's interesting to see the breadth of what's out there, from the people who are trying to give advice on stuff to use to people who are just doing drive-by product reviews, right? To people who are doing entertainment content. It really runs the gamut. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts out of the gate on all these guys?
It depends on what you want from it. There's a few. I'm sorry, right now I can't remember the guy's name. I did an interview on for Sean Hale for Aquashella.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
With a
George.
guy. What's his name?
George
Mochi. No. There was another guest on.
Okay.
I'm gonna feel like an ass if I can't remember his name, which I can't now.
Yeah, this is I know who you're talking about.
I can look it up because I'm gonna feel terrible.
Don't worry, it's just the clock. But anyway,
I like the kind of stuff he's doing. So he talks about what's going on with his tank, and we'll put his name we'll put it in the links for sure. And he brings something new home, and he talks about that, and he talks about what his trials and tribulations of what he's trying to do,
reefer
and what
guy?
he's been thinking about.
Inappropriate
I think so.
reefer?
What's his name? Something with an M.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Sounds right. And I kind of like that, and I think that's got a good place. That's useful stuff. Some of the bigger ones, I'm a little. I get the entertainment stuff, but I don't know what that's doing for the hobby except getting people excited, which I guess is a thing. But I'm always looking at what are they? Does it help? They have?
Is there?
Do they have the goods? Do they have the info? Do they have the content that people who want to do this hobby, for real, are they getting anything really useful out of that besides just the entertainment?
I think we have each of us have a different pet peeve. So I have a pet peeve with people who are, and the word is the wrong word, but they use it all the time, like sponsored, right? But these are basically people who get product, okay, and they then do a review or they talk about a particular product, and they don't always, I should say, puff it up, but they certainly don't give a straightforward the point of view most times, and it's really aggravating to me because I have had private conversations with some of these people, and they're like, well, yeah, but I really don't want to say the negative stuff. And I'm like, who's your audience? How are you doing any favor to the people that are out there if all you do is talk about the middle and better and never the other side of it for them? And if it's a particular company and they would be upset with that, or your future companies of getting stuff, how good are those companies anyway if they don't want an honest conversation about products? It really, really torques me. And there's no follow-up, right? It's like somebody's, I'm going to use this, blah, blah. And then you look and it's like, it's not there. Hey, why isn't it there? And you talk to them, it's like, well, it just didn't really do this. Or it didn't. I'm like, so why don't you tell everybody? This is your audience, And it just goes on and on and on. And if you don't, as talking from my other side, which is obviously in the industry, if you don't sometimes pander to these people, okay, then they basically go out and they'll pick up your competitors, they'll pick up whoever else if you're not there, shoveling free stuff to them. And it's just so aggravating because they'll talk a positive game about absolute anything, Yeah. Anyway, that's my rant on those guys. Yours is more on the entertainment guys, I think. That's where your beef is.
I'm fine with the entertainment. I get concerned when the entertainment is confused with information. And so if you want to talk about Tanked, it's like there's no information in that show.
Right.
Yet people go to that show for information. And they added products and sold products based on the fact that they were on TV. But it's like, what do they know about these products? What do they know about this? So if I'm all for entertainment, I get really nervous when people who don't have information are being looked at as people with the information.
Yeah, so I even separate out the Tanked guys from the super popular guys on YouTube. But like the most popular person on YouTube for the marine that is related to the marine aquarium space is George, Coralfish 12G, who's done an amazing amount of content out there that's got a ton of views, and he's super successful at it, and he does great videos in terms of how he throws them together and everything. And both you and I have had some, we've had a few things about some of his videos and how he's dealt with animals and whatnot, but I take that differently than the Tank guys who are doing the TV program. And the corollary I'll give you is with OCC, which is Orange County Choppers. Okay?
Yeah.
So the Orange County Choppers guys aren't out there teaching you how to best put a gas tank on or one that's going to be safe or whatnot. And many real motorcycle guys would tell you, if you do what they're doing, you're going to kill yourself. Okay? But it's entertainment. But what it does do is it says, man, I really love a custom motorcycle. I'd love to be into custom motorcycles. They're really cool. Mm-hmm. I should find out more about custom motorcycles. And then you go to the custom motorcycle guy and you're like, dude, I really want to have the flames on my handlebars. And he's like, dude, if you turn the wrong direction, you're going to basically shish kebab your face on that thing. You can't have flames on the handlebars cut the way that they did. And that's the way that stuff works, because there is an entertainment side of it, and then there's the follow-through that you've built the demand to the people who are the knowledge people, right? Because nobody's going to go build themselves an aquarium and put 12-inch fish in it above their bed. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
Who's going to sell them those fish and the aquarium to do it and everything else? It's not going to happen.
People are going to sell. No, people will sell them that.
Nobody is going to put together for them, okay, and they're not going to buy a $20,000 aquarium and put 12-inch tangs in it, okay? That there's two people, okay, that are in the audience that are going to do that.
Yeah. But there are people who are going to do a tank outside in the sun with a chiller because they saw it on TV. There are people who are going to put all of the fish that are going to fight each other together because they saw it on TV.
I doubt that, because that means you have no faith in our industry. That means you have no faith in our industry, because you can't go down to Walgreens and buy those fish.
That means I have a realistic faith in our industry that people will do anything for money. because that's the bottom line. So a skate ramp aquarium is a really bad idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Putting and let's add one more part here. There's a difference between OCC because there are no living things being endangered.
No, just people.
Just people. And that's fine.
Well, that's fine.
That's fine. If people want to choose to put themselves in danger, that's up to them.
Okay.
But if people are going to, when they're doing that bubblegum tank, we're like, everything's going to die, and then everything dies. So, but we don't see that on TV. We just know that because we know that.
Right.
We get information afterwards. So
that's a valid point that those particular animals did die in that particular case. Yes. I don't believe the connection, though, to people are going to create bubblegum tanks themselves and try to emulate that. That is not. I just don't believe that that's the case. And they
go to ATM and ask them to make it for them.
Okay.
So that's good.
What, 2 people? Do you know what one of those tanks costs?
Yeah,
the number of people that can even possibly even afford to do something like that is so minuscule. And there's plenty of other people out there doing stupid aquariums all across the country, okay, because they do.
I think we shouldn't be adding. I don't think we should be adding to people doing stupid things to animals because it makes more business for people.
Okay, so back to Coralfish 12G then. So you have a situation.
Nice
what?
Nice pivot.
Yeah, well, it is. It's very.
No, that was.
It's very similar because views on YouTube equal dollars in pocket. Okay, so when you create a and this is where I have the biggest problem because I do think it can be emulated. Okay, I do think it can be emulated a lot more than the tank guys because of the way things are done. When you take a kiddie pool, bring it to the beach, okay, and set up an aquarium on the beach with a kiddie pool, and then go get the fish, and then tell everybody, oh, but we took the fish out after the fact. It doesn't matter. You're doing something for really the shock value, and they're things that the average Joe really can do, and really can show that it's really poor. It's a really poor choice to give people those kinds of ideas just for the views. So maybe we're agreeing more than we know we're agreeing. And maybe I'm a little bit tainted here because I understand the upside for the industry, for things like the tanked, how much positivity it did for the industry and for making certain people in the industry more successful, even when they didn't think that it would or that it did. Because many people come into the aquarium stores and they go, I saw this thing on Tanked, and immediately, and this is probably 98% of the time, immediately they're like, you can't do what they do on Tanked. That's a TV show, but let me show you what you can do. Okay, and what reality is, in the same way that I was talking about OCC. So it's not me coming to defense for these guys, and I probably do have a little bit of I'm slightly tainted because I understand the positive side of what came out of that. But on the YouTube stuff, I know you had the octopus thing too, right? From George. Yeah, it's difficult. It's like the thing we talked about before too, of showing the dead fish right out of the aquariums. We had that discussion already. Yeah. Which is
well, it's a thing like with the octopus. It's like, okay, if you're going to fly with it, there are people who've done that before, and we know what the plan should be.
Right.
And that wasn't done. And then I don't even know what was going on in the sink because we didn't get the whole video, so I don't know anything about that. And I think the next one he did more about some more information about it. So
I think that there's more opportunity with George for people like you and I to have a little bit of influence to try to get some of that stuff corrected, because it is important, right? And we do see the importance of getting some of these things right, and making people understand that what they're doing does have an effect. Like you said, like you think people would make the bubblegum tank. People are going to try to take an octopus on an airplane, right? And I think we have a lot more chance of making a positive influence with someone like George, right, who is reaching out to hundreds of thousands, millions of people, than we would have with the ATM guys, which we don't have to worry about anymore because, at least for now, they don't have a TV show.
Yeah. With ATM, all I wanted was just a little bit more responsibility projected. And they did for a while. They did some things, but that's all. I just want the animals not to be abused in this, and to teach people to treat animals badly because that's what they see people doing on entertainment shows.
Sure, but the people also don't get to see the behind the scenes at the public aquarium either, and they would have many times some of the same feelings about some of the ways in which animals are used for public display.
I don't know, man. Educational Institute where they're saying, hey, here's a bunch of great resources if you want to keep these animals yourself. Here's a bunch of resources for you to start to do that, as opposed to let's put this octopus in a tank we just set up.
No, I get that, but you don't get to
George.
see. Yes, I understand, but you get to see this stuff that you're seeing on TV and a little bit of what you're not. You don't get to really see much of anything that's happening across the country in these other places either. So,
but those are not. That's the public aquarium isn't there to say you should have this in your house, like Tanked is.
But somebody could make the argument that
but that's weak sauce, brother.
Okay,
that's totally different goals and approaches.
Okay,
yeah. One is saying do this, and one is saying don't do this. The natural world is like this, and we work very hard to keep it like that. I think those are very, very different messages.
They are, but there still might be a means to the end on either one of those. You're just saying that the end is better in one, so the means can be. I mean, you truly
don't actually push me. Don't actually push me about the end or the means being better in one. But generally, I would agree to that.
So how about this? Why don't we see if we can? Yeah. We'll see if we can get. George on the show. Okay.
I think. Yeah.
And have the discussion. He can hear this and see how we talk about it and whether or not he wants to have a discussion because he knows what our thoughts are. And if you want, I might be able to get Wade on this show and we can have that discussion.
Well. Okay, what I'd like to avoid is just a fight.
Of course, no, I know
because I don't really care as much anymore. If people want to go on YouTube and do whatever they want to do, they're going to do it.
Sure, but don't you think there's an opportunity for us to influence as aquarists, as people who are, I don't want to. Be highfalutin here, but we are people who are known in the industry, right? And if we can have an influence on somebody who is influencing hundreds of thousands or millions of people with their content, I think we should.
Okay, I mean, it's half your podcast, so you get to do at least 50% of what you think would be good. So
that's show. That's a resounding agreement from Rich, right there.
I don't know. I've gotten off the trying to convince people to do things differently than they already want to do them. If anybody on YouTube wanted to get a hold of any of the people who have been around the industry for a long time and know stuff, they could already do that.
Right.
And if sometimes they do, most of the time they don't.
I think some don't realize how much it matters. That's all I'm saying. I don't believe they really understand all the stuff that we're talking about right now. I don't think they have a real good understanding of the impact and the nuances and many of these things. And I think it's an opportunity to make things better. I think there's no opportunity, obviously, because Tank doesn't exist anymore, even if it did, to really make a change there, right? But I think we do have the opportunity in other places.
Wait, I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk about it. I'm also not the end all of the information.
Let's if we have any listeners out there to our podcast still after having such a
that's a good idea.
Let's get them to sound off. I know there's a lot of people out there, and that don't like the tank stuff, which is just fine, in our industry. And I know there's a lot of people, including myself, who love George's, stuff that he does, and getting overall feedback would be great.
And so I think, do our listeners are they interested in that kind of conversation? Because I remember once you what's the right word? You you trapped me into
that. You make such a big deal out of that, and it's not as big a deal as you think.
But I wouldn't have done it. He dropped me into a Q&A with some people who were really excited about nanobubbles.
Yes, they were advocates of it, and you were, on the other side of that.
And I was not prepared, nor was I interested in doing a tete-a-tete.
It's really good, though. If it's still out there, it's really good.
What?
You
thought it was gay, but I don't know. Maybe it was really good, and I just don't. I'm not a listener to that, so I don't know.
It was really good.
Okay, it was pretty frustrating, because it was hard. Anyway, we don't need to relive that. So
no, we don't. But
as long as it's not just those things, always seem to me like they just end up being a fight. And I don't want to fight if anybody. I want to pick on George. If anybody wants to do, and it was by the way, inappropriate reefer Moki.
Okay.
Yeah, he's nice. I like him a lot. If whoever wants to do their show, however they want to do it, I just, like with everything else about the hobby, I'd like it to be more responsible, because we are getting finer and finer magnifying glass on us all the time.
And that's exactly one of the points to have that discussion. I think it's a good one to bring out, and we'll let the listeners give us more feedback on it. And we're gonna close on that one, Rich, because we're a little over, but it's okay. It's okay because we've been out of it for a while. People want to hear from us. So anyway, if you guys are out there, want to donate, you can donate to on patreon.com/skimmate. We'll take a donation here or there and show us that you love us. Absolutely. Like us on our Facebook page, all that good stuff that's out there. And we want more people, so share us too. We want to have more listeners. So let everybody know about the Skimmate podcast.
That'd be fantastic. And thanks for listening. I'm a little lost now because I'm so trying to be careful about that last topic, because I don't want to fight with anybody anymore. I just want to have discussions.
Me too, Rich. So that's our outro, man. Until next time, hopefully within a couple of weeks. This is the Skimmate Podcast with Rich and Terrence. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay safe. And maybe one of these days we'll be in my backyard with Rich and recording a beautiful podcast from 8 to 10 feet away. See ya. That was good and fun, man.